But would you stand with me this morning as we recite our gospel text this morning from the gospel according to Luke? And I'm gonna read it, and would you just receive this? These are Mary's words. And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. For he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant." Is everything? Okay. "Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and to his descendants forever." This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen. You may be seated. Amen. I'm so grateful to be standing in this space this morning and bringing forth the gospel in word this morning. But I'm going to be honest that I am terrified, as terrified can be. I feel much more comfortable telling the gospel through song and declaring those truths through song than in this space that just feels really intimidating. But alas, here we are, and hopefully this will be relatively painless for both the speaker and the hearers this morning. When I was asked a couple weeks ago to preach on this Sunday, I knew that Mary's beautiful words of the Magnificat were one of the gospel readings this morning. And I came home that day that I was asked, and we have a 3-year-old boy and a 10-week-old baby girl at home, so life is crazy. But I came home, and my son came home from school, and he said, with a flair for the dramatics, which I just can't imagine where he gets it from, but anyways, he said, "Mommy," you never know where that's gonna go, but "Mommy, did you know that the angel Gabriel came to Mary?" And y'all, I'm not kidding you. I went in 1 second 1,000 steps ahead, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, the Lord sees my sleep-deprived state as a mom of a newborn, and he's gonna give me the truths of all of this text through my toddler right now." And I was so excited. All that took place in less than 1 second, because it's a lot going on in here. But then I just tried to regain my composure, and I was so excited, and I said, "Buddy, that's so awesome. What else do you know about Gabriel and Mary?" And I don't know if I should share this, but I'm going to. His response in just the eloquent way of a toddler boy was, "I tooted, ha 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 ha," and then he grabs a dinosaur and starts roaring around the house and screaming at me and waking up the baby and running around like crazy, chomping me with his dinosaur teeth. So I didn't get the most magnificent thing in the world, but that is what it's like here. And so if you've got these grand notions that, these pastor homes are just, the children come out with seminary degrees and it's just holy all the time and only scripture is spoken and our children are just these wonderful cherubs with all the wisdom in the world. Well, it's a hot mess at our house too, so just take heart. But as I would have loved, certainly, for that lightning bolt of wisdom to come through my toddler, which it might at some point, I have loved digging into the truths of this Christmas story over the last week. I've loved diving into this text, seeing it with new eyes, and being amazed that this story is also my story. I probably too, at 3, could have said the names Gabriel and Mary. I probably too could have recited that something happened and there was a baby Jesus and all of this, but just like it will for Aiden, this story will deepen with him as he grows, as it does for all of us, and is somehow familiar and completely new each time we read it. I've always loved the scriptures. I've always been fascinated. I've been that annoying kid in Sunday school who would always ask like, why? And, I've always been fascinated by these stories. But really it was Mary who showed me that I could see myself in the text for the first time in a powerful way. I'm sure that I had heard, even as young as 3, that she was probably a teenage girl when this incredible event occurred and the angel Gabriel came to her and she has those beautiful words, "Let it be done to me according to your will." I'm sure I heard about that before I was a teenage girl, but when I became a teenager and I heard that story of how God used a teenage girl like me, something unlocked in me, and I saw that this text is living and moving and breathing, and it is also for me as a teenage girl when I saw that. See, I think that every story of Scripture has something to tell us, has something to reveal to us, no matter what, but there's something powerful that happens when each of us can find a story where maybe the leap is not so great, where we can see ourselves in the text, where we can see that maybe God could use a poor teenage girl, a teenager, a female, to bring forth this miraculous event. And though certainly I'm not comparing myself to Mary by any shape or form, that was a powerful thing that dared me to start asking, God, how can you use me? And it gave me the courage to actually believe he would answer that question, right? Even as a teenage girl. It gave me the courage to see how he used her, that maybe he could use me in some way. And this story is indeed true of this poor teenage girl, that somehow I am irreversibly connected to and inspired by, of how she said yes to the call of God on her life, and through whom the most miraculous event in human history occurred. A couple years ago, I had the opportunity to travel to Israel with our church. And one of my favorite sites while I was there is in Jerusalem, and it's the Church of St. Anne. And I had never heard of this space. I'd never heard of St. Anne, but this is where Christian tradition believed to be the birthplace of Mary. And it's believed to be that Mary's mother's name was Anne. We don't have this information in our text. It's just what tradition has been passed down to us. And I will never forget, we're standing in this beautiful sanctuary, and this priest, who is shorter than I am, which is quite short, had this twinkle in his eye and this passion in him as he was telling us why he loved serving in this Church of St. Anne. He said, it's not only to honor Mary's parents, of Anne, who bears the name of the church, but it's to honor those foremothers and forefathers of our faith, to acknowledge that we are who we are because of the spiritual and physical foremothers and forefathers who went ahead of us, who have done that slow and steady and unseen work of teaching us about the faith. And he asked us to just envision what Mary must have been like up into that point where she might have been a 13-year-old teenage girl in this miraculous event. What stories did her parents instruct in her so that when she heard this call of God on her life, that she said, yeah, that sounds like my God. And I can say yes to this and trust that he is faithful. And to say that beautiful yielded statement, let it be done to me according to your word. And I wonder if some of the stories she might have heard through her parents, through her mother Anne, through overhearing the things from the temple, were the standards that we all hear too of Abraham and Moses and David. But if she also asked her mom to tell her some of those bedtime stories where she could see herself in them as well. My son, anytime that he sees a Bible, he's like, tell me the story of David and Goliath. And we kind of like roll our eyes sometimes because we've said it like 100,000 times, and he's only 3. But I started to realize how amazing is that he understands in that reading of David and Goliath that David was a small boy through whom God worked. There's something even in his 3-year-old brain that understands that it's beginning to unlock that, wow, this gospel story, this story of how God works through all people, worked through a little boy. And I wonder if it's starting to sit in him that it worked through a little boy, David, and this could work through a little boy named Aiden. There's something powerful about that. So I wonder if Mary ever asked her mother Anne to read her the bedtime stories of the fierce women like Miriam and Deborah, and even her devout relative Elizabeth. Stories that maybe she could see herself in some powerful way. I wonder if she happened to know the stories of the women who would eventually be recorded as ultimate bearers of the Messiah with her in what we now have as the genealogy from Abraham to Christ in Matthew's gospel. Did she see how her God weaved redemption through and gave dignity to the stories of Tamar and Rahab and Ruth and Bathsheba, who were scandalous choices through whom her God chose to work and who are included in the very list with Mary as the foremothers of Christ? That is amazing. And as she beautifully states in the scripture we just read, she knew that his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. She goes on to say, he has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, Abraham, and to his descendants forever. She must have understood, even faintly, how connected she was to those who had gone before her. And that in the mystery of God's plan, she was standing with them, those foremothers and forefathers of the faith, as a part of the promise he had been working in all this time. And so just as Mary drew me deeper into the story of our text, into this gospel story, and made me truly believe that God can use everyone, including me, I wonder if she might have been quick to receive this unprecedented event of carrying the Christ child, because she knew that this was not unlike her God, to do miraculous things through the most unlikely of people. Later on in Luke, we see this encounter with the angels greeting the shepherds. And many of us know this, they say, "Fear not, for I bring good news of great joy." And we say that so often, but it actually, the sentence is longer than that. It says, "I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people." And that is the heart of the gospel, this good news of great joy for all the people. So often we read our text with the lens of our culture in mind and are tempted to read it from the top down instead of the bottom up. But don't you love that some of the first people privileged to hear the breaking of God's silence for 400 years were some of the most unlikely of people? We see in our text that brief page turn between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament. But that marked these 400 years of wondering, God, what in the world are you doing, of waiting for this Messiah, of conjuring up stories of, will you come as a king? Will you come as a powerful one? No idea that he would come as a baby. And the people who are first privileged to hear this breaking of silence were not the ones with the most power at the top and who had the most to gain. But it was actually the ones who really had the most to gain. An unwed, pregnant teenage girl saying yes to a miracle, but knowing culturally it might destroy her. He broke his silence to some unnamed shepherds who went to go and see, what is this all about? To a devout couple serving the Lord for decades, but who also bore the pain and the grief of decades-long infertility. Foreigners from a distant land to show us that, yes, this is true, the good news of great joy for all the people. And I wonder, in that encounter with the shepherds and the angels, and then they go to see Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus, and it says that the shepherds told them everything that was told to them by the angel and by the Lord. And I wonder if Mary was like, yeah, that sounds like my God. And I'm not surprised that it is us unlikely people gathered here together in worship. See, the connectedness of this gospel story has been especially what has greeted me with newness over the last week. As I was reading this week and studying, I came across an excerpt from Rachel Held Evans' newest book, and on a section about the gospel stories, in which she said, I'm sure I must have begun my high school testimony by saying I was raised as in a Christian home without fully grasping the epic nature of the story to which I belonged. That's what's so striking about this gospel, about this good news of Jesus. It's a story at once grand and particular, at once sweeping and intimate. News that started as local gossip in a few sleeping fishing villages in ancient Palestine, reverberated so profoundly through the centuries and across the world that it reached the ears of a pigtailed kindergartner in Birmingham, Alabama in 1984. Or in my case, that it reached the ears of a pigtailed girl in Anderson, Indiana in 1987. And I've been arrested by this notion of connectedness to this gospel story that we read, but sometimes forget how epic and powerful it is. And if we are either first generation Christians or we come from a long line, that's the story of which we're a part. We never stand in it alone. We stand with those who have gone before us, those who have come behind us. That is a powerful thing, this epic story of the gospel of good news for great joy for all the people. And so this week, as I've been diving into just the gospel story that's in our text, I also started to wonder, what is my story of origin a little bit as a Christian? Because I too could say, I grew up in a Christian home without grasping the epic nature of that, both the large one that I'm a part of, all of those foremothers and forefathers, but also a more localized one that might just go back a couple generations. And so I picked up the phone and I called my grandpa, Papa, and I asked him out of the blue, but he loved talking about it. Do you know where our story as Christians begin on the Patty side? And he said, we have a long history, even when our family was in England, of being religious and ministers, but something shifted in our family in 1907 when my mother went to a tent revival meeting in Sapulpa, Oklahoma. He knew it like without any warning. He knew 1907 is when things changed, when his mother went to a tent revival meeting and her life was radically transformed by the gospel that she knew, but that suddenly became real to her, and she saw herself in the story. And he said a few years later, his father followed, and then they went on to have many, many children. But then they lost a child and walked through that unimaginable grief of child loss. And he said, I knew that my parents knew who God was, but walking through that grief and proclaiming, even when they didn't see it or feel it, that this was still Emmanuel, God with us, even in grief, changed them forever and changed me forever. I then called my great aunt, Ann Smith, which I can't help but talking about her anytime I can. She's 95 years old. She'll be 95 in January, and she is still a Spitfire. She's texting me this week with emojis, and she still walks miles a day. She is unbelievable, and she is truly the most Christ-like person that I've ever met. But I asked her the same story. Do you know where our story kind of starts in a new way on my dad's side? And I heard her share the stories about my great-grandfather on my dad's side, who was a sharecropper in Louisiana with 15 children and as poor as can be. and how every night he would gather his family together and read the scriptures and pray and sing the hymns together, declaring that their God is the same God who has been faithful to all the generations. And he was known in his community as Sunday School Smith, because anybody who would listen, he would tell them about this gospel story, and especially the children. And everywhere he went, people knew Sunday School Smith at the turn of the century as a sharecropper in Louisiana. And I heard about the stunning story of peace on earth that occurred in 1945 with my great uncle. He was a part of the army, and he was sent in October of 1945 to Japan as a part of the occupation. The bomb had just dropped in August of that year, and he was a minister of the gospel already, and began to connect with different chaplains and different ministers in Japan as well, which it was very hard to find. And just the tension of these people coming together who had been enemies and trying to find out how to live together. And I heard the story that Christmas of 1945, 250 Japanese women and men and American men came together to sing Handel's Messiah, to bring peace on earth in the middle of a war. And a deep dive in Google, where I spent probably way too much time this week, I somehow came across a picture of this concert, and it'll be on the screen here. And I couldn't believe it that I found this. I sent it to my great aunt, and she just said that she's covered with goosebumps. She can't believe it. Somewhere in there is my great uncle, who is being a peacemaker, like Pastor Greg inspired us to ask how we can be peacemakers. He is being a peacemaker. He is realizing that those who were the enemy are actually children of God, just like him, and that you can come together even in the middle of the chaos after war, and you can declare the peace of God that unites all people in all places, the good news for all people at all times. Amen? And this is the story of which I am a part. This gospel story that was real for Mary, that was real for Sunday School Smith, that was real for my great uncle Nathan. This is the story of which we are a part. And I pray that in this Advent season, we don't let this time just pass us by without realizing the epic and sweeping and also intimate nature of this gospel story. This is indeed good news of great joy for all the people. And these are the revolutionary stories that remind me that if God calls me to something, he will make a way, because I've seen his faithfulness proved from generation to generation to those who were willing, just like Mary. And as I lingered on the phone with my great aunt this last Thursday, I asked her, what does joy mean to you? And because she's the most Christ-like person that I know, she said, let me tell you a story. When you ask her a question, she responds with a story every time. And she said, you know how deeply I loved your great uncle Nathan. It was the love that I wish every person could know. And after walking through years and years of him having cancer, once we finally knew that the time was coming for his life to end here, I started to cancel speaking engagements that I had lined up, and we just knew that it was time to just make space. And she said, and I tried to cancel everything, but he told me that I could not cancel this one event that October. And I thought he was crazy, but I promised him that I would do it. And then he went on to pass away in August of that year. And she said, then I found out that speaking engagement in October was about joy. And so I began recognizing God's invitation to joy in my life and the greatest loss that I have ever known. And she said, I began researching about joy. And I understood that somehow pain and joy can coexist in the same heart at the same time. Pain and happiness cannot coexist at the same time, but pain and joy can both coexist in the same heart at the same time. And then she quoted me something that she has said for years. She is somebody who is as honest as can be about loss that she has experienced in her life, of which she has had many, but she also embodies joy in a way I've never seen before. And I've heard her say this quote so many times, and she said, I learned the truth of this statement that I found in this book called You Gotta Keep Dancing by Tim Hansel, that there is no box created by God or by us where the top can't be blown off and the walls cannot fall down, on which God cannot make a dance floor where we can celebrate life. And she said, I learned even in the passing of my beloved husband that God can meet me in that joy and that he can usher me into a different kind of wonderful and fullness. But that was not less than what it was before. And I learned that I could acknowledge the pain and also receive the joy that was offered. We sang the carol, joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her king. Let every heart prepare him room. What does preparing him room look like? It looks like inviting that joy within us. It looks like Mary, who I think understood that what was being asked of her was crazy. Could have been devastating to her, could have ruined her engagement, ruined her relationship with her parents, that she could have been cast out, that yes, this amazing event occurred, but she didn't really know that how much God would make a way, and her life was marked with grief in so many ways, but she was able to receive the joy, to acknowledge the pain, and also receive the joy and say those beautiful yielded statements of let it be done to me according to your will. What a powerful that thing is. Even Mary invited the pain for the sake of the joy. Because when we know that joy is around us, that joy can be a part of our story, it changes how we react to the pain, doesn't it? To where we can somehow too say, let it be done to me according to your will. As we prepare to close, I want to invite Christopher up, and there's a song that has been so powerful to me each Advent season over the last many years. And it's kind of a reimagining of the Magnificat, of acknowledging this for Mary, that she was saying yes to so many unknowns. She was saying yes to a different kind of wonderful and fullness that God was offering to her, but one that would allow pain to be marked on her. Not only pain in childbirth, but so many unknowns of what does this mean to carry this Christ child. But then she says, I'm willing. Let every heart prepare him room. And I trust that you are the same God that I have heard about from generation to generation, and you will be faithful even to me. And so as I sing this song, I hope that you can find yourself in this story too. That you can find yourself, no matter what your season carries right now, that we can just say, the only thing my heart can offer is a vacancy. Be born in me, even now.
Amen. Everything inside me cries for order, and everything inside me wants to hide. Is this shadow a stranger or a warrior? If God is pleased with me, why am I so terrified? Someone tell me I am only dreaming, and somehow help me see with heaven's eyes. But before my head agrees, my heart is on its knees. Holy is he, blessed am I, be born this time we've waited for the promise, and all this time you've waited for my arms. And did you wrap yourself inside the unexpected, that we might know that love would go that far? Be born in me, be born in me. Trembling heart, somehow I believe that you chose me. I'll hold you in the beginning, you will hold me in the end. Every moment in the middle, make my heart your Bethlehem. Be born in me. I am not brave, I'll never be. The only thing my heart can offer is a vacancy. I'm just a girl, I'm nothing more, but I am willing and I am yours. Be born in me, be born in me. I'll hold you in the beginning, you will hold me in the end. Every moment in the middle, make my heart your Bethlehem. Be born in me. Be born in me. And now would you stand for the benediction? This is an unusual benediction. And I'm not sure why I feel so led to share it, but it's a letter that my great aunt wrote my daughter, whose middle name is Anne, named after her. And it's a story that to me, just like it is so specific to my great aunt, to her namesake who was just born, it's also a story for all of us. It's a reminder for all of us and a blessing for all of us. So would you receive these words? I'm a great believer in connectedness. I believe I am connected to everything that came before me and to everything that comes after me. I am not here by accident. You are not here by accident. There is no way you cannot make a difference. This world is somehow changed because Elizabeth Ann lives in it. You matter. The choices you will make matter. You are in the world in this particular time in history for a reason. And you have the privilege by God's grace to live out that reason. I am so honored that you hear the name Anne. You are at the beginning of an incredible journey, and I am approaching the end of what has been a journey filled with both pain and joy. Failures and successes, mountains and valleys, but always with a presence that made the journey too wonderful to put into words. Because there is a baby girl who just recently made her grand entrance and whose journey lies before her, and who hears the name Anne, makes it much easier to end my journey with joy. As long as you keep your hand in God's hand, God will surprise you over and over again with wonders beyond your imagining, and also hold you steady in the difficult times. May He give you enough challenges to keep you growing, and enough joys to make you dance with abandon. May we all prepare him room this Advent season to receive the joy that he offers so freely to each and every one of us. Now go in peace and serve the Lord.